This is English for real people. A journey into clear, authentic English, explained slowly, calmly, and with purpose. Where every episode brings you closer to understanding the language in its natural form. Welcome.
Imagine you are standing at customs in this massive, busy international airport.
Oh, the classic nightmare scenario.
Right. I mean, you've been studying for this trip for like 6 months. You have the flashcards, you have the fancy app, a whole notebook full of vocabulary.
Yep, you're totally prepared.
Exactly. Or so you think. The customs agent looks at your passport, looks up at you, and asks a very simple, totally predictable question in English. And suddenly your brain just goes entirely blank.
Just completely offline.
You freeze. The vocabulary is just gone, and you're left wondering, why does our memory completely abandon us the literal second we actually need it the most?
Well, it happens because we fundamentally misunderstand how the brain actually stores information. I mean, most of us approach learning a language as if the brain is like a computer hard drive.
Right, like a USB stick.
Exactly. We assume you can just take a piece of data, like a translated sentence, drag it into a mental folder, hit save, and it'll just sit there perfectly intact until you need to open it.
Which would be nice, but
human memory is not a binary, predictable storage unit. It's a highly complex biological connection machine.
And, when you treat a biological web of neurons like a digital filing cabinet, you are just setting yourself up for that terrifying blank stare at the customs desk.
You really are.
Which brings us to our mission for you today. Welcome to this deep dive. Today, we are unpacking a really fascinating stack of source material. We've got neuroscience-backed learning guides like the Speak Institute and Inglés, transcripts from YouTube language educators, and these extensive vocabulary manuals.
It's a lot of data.
It is. But we're pulling all of this together to extract the ultimate scientifically proven survival toolkit. We're focusing on essentially the core phrases para viajar, travel phrases, specifically for airports, hotels, buses, and train stations, because those are the 4 major environments where communication breakdowns cause the absolute most panic.
Oh, absolutely. And to build that toolkit, we kind of have to throw out the traditional playbook. Because the sources are completely unanimous on this point-passive memorization, staring at translation lists and drilling isolated grammar rules, it just does not work for real-world application.
It's basically useless when you're stressed.
Right. So instead, we're going to walk you through a methodology the sources call active context. This is about physically and emotionally hardwiring these specific travel phrases into your neural pathways.
So they basically bypass the panic response entirely.
Exactly. They become instantly available when you need them.
Okay, let's frame this properly. If the brain isn't a hard drive where we just drop files, maybe a better way to look at it is like paving a path through a very dense forest.
Oh, I like that analogy.
Yeah, like if you walk through the forest once, which is the equivalent of just reading a phrase on a piece of paper, the underbrush just grows right back.
There's no permanent path.
Right. To actually build a road, you have to clear the brush, lay down gravel, and drive a heavy truck over it repeatedly. So if passive reading is just walking through the forest once, how do we actually start paving the road for our first batch of vocabulary?
Well, let's start with the first and honestly most stressful hurdle of any trip, the airport.
The ultimate proving ground.
It really is. The airport tests language retention because stress actively inhibits memory retrieval. When you're rushing through a crowded terminal trying to find your gate, your body releases all this cortisol and adrenaline.
That total chemical cocktail.
Yes. And if you relied on rote memorization, that chemical cocktail will literally block your access to those memories. So the first step of the active context method, which is highlighted in the Speak Institute research, is a principle called capture the full scene.
And they make a really strong point here that you should never write down or study a vocabulary word in isolation, right?
Never. Because the brain requires a framework to attach meaning to a sound. If you just try to memorize the isolated word for gate, your brain flags it as irrelevant, abstract data.
It lacks utility.
Exactly. You need the complete functional phrase for it to stick.
Okay, so pulling from our expressionist commune source, we have this list of high-stakes airport survival phrases. We're looking at sentences like, fasten your belts, please. I want a one-way ticket. I have nothing to declare. And a really critical navigational phrase, which gate must I go to?
Right. Now, to make a phrase like, which gate must I go to, permanent, You need to engage multiple neural pathways simultaneously.
How do we do that?
Well, Julio Martinez in the Neuro-English method introduces a technique for this called neuromapping. He argues that you should take that phrase and physically draw up a visual representation of it on a piece of paper.
Wait, like literally sketch it out?
Literally, you sketch out a boarding gate, maybe add a little airplane, and draw a large question mark next to a stick figure.
Okay, I need to push back on this approach for a second. Conceptually, creating a visual aid makes sense. But in practice, what if I possess, like, zero artistic ability?
Most people don't.
Right. So if I sit at my kitchen table drawing a barely recognizable, wonky stick figure next to a square that's supposed to be a gate, am I actually encoding memory, or am I just wasting valuable study time scribbling?
I'm so glad you brought this up because it's a very common misconception about visual learning. The artistic quality of the drawing is entirely irrelevant. In fact, the uglier and more idiosyncratic the drawing is, the better it might actually work.
Wait, seriously, why would a worse drawing be better for memory?
Because the goal isn't to create art. The goal is to create cognitive friction.
Cognitive friction.
Yeah. When you are forced to take an abstract English phrase and translate it into a visual symbol that makes sense specifically to you, you're forcing your brain to work much harder. You are processing the linguistic information through your visual cortex and your motor cortex at the exact same time.
Oh, wow. So the struggle is the point.
Exactly. That effort, the friction of trying to figure out how to draw which gate, is what thickens the neural pathway. It creates this unique, personalized web of associations rather than a single, fragile point of data.
That tracks. You aren't just reading the ink on a page. You are the one actually producing the ink.
Precisely.
But the sources suggest we can push this even further into the body, right? The Planeta Immelens source details a concept called total physical response, or TPR.
Yes, and TPR is incredibly effective for environments like airports or airplanes. The core premise is that language acquisition accelerates dramatically when you involve the physical body.
So let's take the phrase, fasten your belts, please.
Okay, so instead of just sketching it out or reading on a flashcard, you incorporate movement. You sit in your chair, you reach across your body, you physically mime the action of pulling a heavy seatbelt across your lap, and you make a clicking motion with your hands, all while saying the phrase out loud.
So the mechanism at play here is essentially muscle memory. You are tying the English vocabulary directly to a physical, kinesthetic action.
You've got it. You are utilizing the motor cortex to bypass what linguists call the affective filter.
The affective filter. That's the anxiety wall, right?
Yes. It's basically a wall of anxiety that goes up in your brain when you feel intimidated or stressed, and it completely prevents you from processing language.
Why?
But by anchoring the vocabulary to a physical movement, the phrase becomes an ingrained reflex rather than an intellectual test question. When you finally sit in that airplane seat and hear the metallic click of the belt, your body remembers the phrase automatically.
Okay, so through neuromapping and total physical response, we've successfully navigated the chaos of the airport, we've retrieved our luggage, and we've arrived at our accommodation.
Huge relief.
Huge. But the hotel environment requires a pretty big shift in strategy. While physical movement helps with immediate recall, long-term retention requires something deeper. The hotel is really the ideal setting to deploy the second major cognitive tool from our sources, emotional personalization.
It is a profound shift because the hotel is a highly intimate space. It represents rest, security, and your very specific personal baseline needs.
Right.
The Speak Institute outlines step 2 of the active context method, which they title Make It Yours. To lock a phrase into your permanent memory bank, you have to extract it from the theoretical textbook and insert it into a scenario that is 100% real and deeply personal to your own life.
Let's look at the essential hotel phrases the sources provide for this. We have functional requests like, do you have any rooms available? Oh, I'd like a room with twin beds. Is breakfast included in the price? And a really vital one for anyone dealing with time zones. Could you wake me up at 7 a.m.?
To understand how to anchor these, we really have to look at Axel Morales' research on anchoring techniques. Morales explains that the human brain evolved to prioritize information that is tied to strong emotions.
Because emotion signals importance.
Exactly. If you want to make a piece of vocabulary permanent, you have to link it to a highly specific, vibrant, visceral feeling. You have to visualize the environment and genuinely manufacture the emotion of the scene.
Okay, let me test this out to see if I'm grasping the mechanism here.
Mm-hmm.
If I want to memorize the phrase, could you wake me up at 7 a.m.? I shouldn't just repeat it 10 times out loud.
Definitely not.
Right. Instead, I need to sit down and vividly imagine my own unique experience of severe jet lag.
Yeah.
Like I need to picture that heavy, exhausted feeling right behind my eyes.
Yes. Feel the exhaustion.
I need to imagine the pitch-black darkness of an unfamiliar hotel room, the jarring, high-pitched ring of the phone on the nightstand, and that sudden jolt of panic that I might have overslept and missed my morning walking tour.
Yeah.
I have to physically feel that stress in my chest while I practice the phrase.
You have absolutely nailed the mechanism. Emotion is the ultimate adhesive for long-term memory. When you manufacture that scenario, your amygdala, the part of the brain that processes emotional responses, lights up.
Because it thinks it's real.
Exactly. It sends a signal to your hippocampus, which handles memory consolidation, and it essentially says, hey, pay attention, this feeling is intense, this information is critical for our well-being.
So by attaching "is breakfast included in the price" to a genuine lived feeling of being incredibly hungry and, stressed about a tight travel budget, I'm moving the phrase from abstract data into a simulated life event.
You are tricking your biology. You are pre-living the experience.
Wow.
So when you finally walk up to the real hotel concierge, your brain doesn't perceive the interaction as a novel, terrifying threat. It perceives it as familiar territory. You've been there before, emotionally speaking.
That is just a remarkable way to manipulate your own nervous system.
Okay.
So we have visual mapping for the airport and emotional anchoring for the hotel.
We're making progress.
We are, but eventually, you have to leave the sanctuary of your room. You have to step out into the unpredictable, noisy streets of a foreign city. Yeah. This is where you need phrases for public transit buses, subways, train stations. And this environment introduces a completely different cognitive threat. The forgetting curve.
Oh, the forgetting curve is a ruthless biological reality. It was discovered by Hermann Ebbinghaus, and the principle basically dictates that if you learn a new piece of information once, your brain immediately begins the process of degrading and discarding it.
It's just sweeping it out.
Exactly. Unless you actively prove to your brain that this data is necessary for your ongoing survival, it will be swept away.
Which is obviously the absolute last thing you want when you are staring at an incomprehensible transit map while a crowd of angry commuters pushes past you.
A total nightmare.
Right. And our sources give us some incredibly important phrases for this exact moment. Things like, from what platform does the train leave?
Yeah.
How much is the bus fare? I get off here. And arguably the most vital emergency phrase you can possibly carry. I am lost.
Essential. And to fight the natural decay of that forgetting curve, the My English School source emphasizes the use of a spaced repetition system, or SRS.
How does that work in practice?
Well, SRS is an algorithm of review. You don't just look at the phrase for platform every single day. You review it today. Then you wait until your brain is just on the absolute verge of forgetting it, maybe 3 days later, and you force yourself to recall it. Then you wait a week, then a month.
So returning to our forest metaphor from earlier, you're letting the underbrush almost grow back over the path, and right before it disappears entirely, you drive the heavy truck over it again.
Which signals to the brain that the path must be permanently paved. That is the exact mechanism. By interrupting the forgetting process at strategically timed intervals, you cement the transit phrases into long-term storage.
Okay, I understand the theory of spaced repetition, but let me push back on the reality of actually using it on the ground.
Sure.
I can use SRS to flawlessly memorize my own question, right?
Yeah.
I can walk up to the transit counter and perfectly articulate, from what platform does the train leave? But SRS doesn't prepare me for the response.
The unpredictable human element.
Exactly. What happens when the busy ticket agent replies to me at lightning speed using colloquial slang with a thick local accent, and I comprehend absolutely nothing?
That scenario is the #1 cause of conversational paralysis. You fire off your perfect memorized sentence, and the unpredictable response just shatters your confidence.
It's devastating in the moment.
It is. But the YouTube sources we analyze, specifically the transcripts from Aprender Inglés Americano and Langus, they tackle this directly. They argue that you cannot just memorize your own inquiries. You must arm yourself with defensive, conversational survival phrases.
The phrases that buy you time to think.
Yes. Sentences like, could you repeat that? Hey, I don't understand. And can you speak slower?
Yeah.
The sources emphasize that a crucial part of language acquisition is shifting your mindset about these specific phrases.
In what way?
Well, asking a local to slow down is not a failure of your language skills. It is a natural, expected component of human communication. I mean, native speakers ask each other for clarification constantly in noisy environments like train stations.
That's a really good point. Knowing those defensive phrases provides a safety net. But how do you practice that unpredictable back and forth in your living room so that you don't just freeze up when the ticket agent barks an answer at you?
This is where the neuro-English methodology comes in with a highly effective auditory practice called shadowing.
Shadowing.
Yeah. You utilize accessible technology like Google Translate or ChatGPT's voice function to simulate these transit dialogues. You input your target phrase, for example, how much is the bus fare? And you listen to the artificial voice generate the English audio.
Okay.
But you don't just listen passively, you mimic the audio out loud simultaneously.
Wait, so you are talking over the audio trying to match it perfectly?
Exactly. You're matching the rhythm, the intonation, the rising pitch at the end of a question, and the specific pauses. You're training your ear to process the speed of natural speech, and you're training the muscles in your mouth to produce the sounds fluidly.
Oh, I see. So if I am preparing for the bus, I'm shadowing how much is the bus fare, anticipating the cadence of a rapid answer. And if the simulated response is too fast, I've already shadowed, can you speak slower? So many times that my mouth can deploy the phrase before my brain even has time to panic.
You are engineering predictability into an inherently unpredictable environment. You are systematically removing the panic response.
Let's pull all of these threads together and look at the comprehensive travel toolkit we have built for you today. For the high-stress, high-cortisol environment of the airport, we are abandoning rote memorization.
Completely throwing it out.
Right. We're using neuromapping to force visual processing and total physical response, literally miming the seatbelt to bypass anxiety and encode the vocabulary into our motor cortex.
Then for the personal environment of the hotel, we shift to emotional personalization. We anchor phrases about wake-up calls and breakfast prices to visceral, simulated feelings of jet lag and hunger.
Ensuring the brain tags the information as critical for survival.
Exactly.
And finally, for the chaotic, unpredictable arena of public transit, we are deploying a spaced repetition system to fight the biological reality of the forgetting curve. And we're pairing that with a shadowing technique, practicing our defensive phrases so that when a busy train conductor speaks way too quickly, we're prepared to ask them to slow down without freezing.
And you know, the unifying thread across every single piece of source material here is that human memory demands active, friction-heavy engagement. The brain will not store passive translation lists. You must draw the scene, feel the emotion, time the repetition, and physically speak the rhythm.
And the reason all of this intense preparation matters to you, the listener, isn't about achieving academic perfection. I mean, nobody is handing out grades at the border crossing or the bus stop.
Thank goodness.
Seriously. Mastering these specific travel phrases using neuroscience-backed techniques is entirely about neutralizing the deep, paralyzing anxiety of the unknown. When you are no longer terrified of how to ask for the correct train platform or how to explain to a cab driver that you're lost, you reclaim your mental bandwidth.
You get your trip back.
Exactly. You actually get to relax, look around, and genuinely experience the adventure you traveled so far to have.
Before we wrap up, though, I want to leave you with one final, slightly provocative thought to consider.
Oh, hit us with it.
It builds on an underlying theme from the My English School source regarding the nature of social interaction. Because throughout this deep dive, we focused heavily on solitary preparation drawing diagrams alone, visualizing jet lag in your living room, shadowing audio into your phone.
Right, very solo activities.
But consider the biological purpose of language. What if the ultimate memory hack isn't actually found in controlled, isolated study? What if the strongest neural pathway is forged through the sheer vulnerability of human connection?
Wait, that is a fascinating pivot. You're suggesting that the messy reality of the trip itself is the best mnemonic device.
Think about the neuroscience of a genuine social interaction. When you approach a stranger, multiple areas of your brain light up simultaneously to assess risk, read facial expressions, and formulate speech. So consider this possibility. Could the slight temporary embarrassment of mispronouncing how much is the bus fare to a stranger at a rainy bus stop in London actually be the secret ingredient?
Oh, wow.
Could that tiny, uncomfortable moment of social friction, followed by the shared humanity of them smiling and helping you outcreate the strongest, most permanent memory anchor your brain could ever possibly construct?
The idea that the mistake itself, the vulnerability of just trying and failing in the real world, is the exact mechanism that permanently saves the file.
The human connection might be the only hard drive that actually works.
That is an incredible place to end our analysis today. Stop treating your mind like a digital storage unit. Embrace the friction, build the neural pathways, and allow yourself to be vulnerable in the real world. Pack these cognitive tools in your mental carry-on and take them out to the streets on your next adventure. Thank you for joining us on this deep dive.